Hi everyone, Kevin Pollock here, standing at Bristoe Station Battlefield Heritage Park. You can see behind me the tracks of what was once the Orange and Alexandria Railroad that ran through here beginning in the early 1850s and that established Bristoe Station, which would have stood just off to my right, to your left, as you are facing the railroad tracks. The stories that we focus on here at the battlefield are mostly Civil War because there were two major encampments here, one Confederate encampment in 1861 and a Union encampment in 1864, and then two major battles that were fought here. The Battle of Kettle Run during the Second Manassas Campaign in August of 1862, and then the Battle of Bristoe Station on October 14th of 1863. But there were quite a few other Civil War events that took place here that were, in some cases, related to those battles, and in other cases, they were just their own separate events that would have happened here along the railroad tracks. This railroad here, the Orange and Alexandria Railroad, was a crucial Union supply line during the Civil War, and as such, it became a constant target of Confederate armies and Confederate guerrilla raiders. So there was always action going on up and down the line here. Today, it is still an active railroad, and you might see a train pass behind me while filming this video. And of course, if you've ever driven along Route 619 through Bristoe Station, you've probably been stopped by a train here before. In August of 1862, just following the Battle of Kettle Run, again, that was fought on August 27th, 1862, these tracks were lined with Union trains that had been posted further to the south, my left, your right, supplying the Union Army. But because the railroad line bridge had been burned earlier that month over Broad Run, trains weren't able to get across Broad Run, and so they were stranded here. Soldiers of the Union's Second Corps under the command of Nathaniel Banks were positioned here during the Battle of Second Manassas to guard the Union supply lines and supply depots that were here. Inside of those train cars that were stuck on top of the tracks was all sorts of uniforms, ammunition, food, all sorts of military and medical supplies that were required by both armies during the Civil War. But following John Pope and the Union Army's defeat at the Battle of Second Manassas on August 30th, Pope began moving his army back closer to the defenses of Washington, D.C., and so he ordered Nathaniel Banks to destroy the trains that were sitting here on the tracks. Beginning on August 31st, soldiers first from Pennsylvania and then eventually Nathaniel Banks' entire corps began to burn and destroy these train cars and locomotives any way that they possibly could. Columns of smoke flew up into the air, and eventually some of those flames that were used to burn the rail cars reached some of the artillery ammunition, and it sounded like there was a second battle going on here at Bristoe Station on August 31st because of all the ammunition igniting and blowing up. Soldiers were told that they couldn't take anything from the burning conflagration there on the railroad tracks, but nonetheless, some soldiers did brave the flames. They jumped into burning rail cars. They grabbed overcoats, food, whatever they possibly could to take with them. Ultimately, though, this was a very bad day for the logistic support of the United States Army, and between Stonewall Jackson's burning of a couple of railroad trains here just a few days earlier on the night of August 26th, and what Banks did on the afternoon of August 31st, the Orange and Alexandria Railroad lost nearly half of its entire rolling stock that was in its possession, 8 locomotives and nearly 200 cars that had been burned here on these tracks, and the total damage done to the federal war effort numbered somewhere in the ballpark of $170,000 in 1862 currency. Today, that's nearly $4.5 million of the federal war effort that had gone up in smoke right here on the tracks of the Orange and Alexandria Railroad. Eventually, Union troops would come back down here. They would reoccupy Bristoe Station, repair the railroad, and as I mentioned, continue to use it throughout the remainder of the Civil War as a supply line to supply their armies fighting further and further south, closer to the Confederate capital at Richmond.